what thematically happened? What was the most important thing that happened at the Baltimore Sun? What was the most important thing depicted that happened in season 5?
Was it that they were chasing after the Pulitzer Prizes? They were going after the prizes instead of...
Well, they were doing that. That was part of it. That was part of it. But no, that's not. I mean, that led to the theme. That's one of the ingredients. Yeah.
I feel like in a lot of ways it was ambition over substance, both between the reporters and between the ambition to get more ad money or to do more with less. It's trying to make more money for the newspaper.
No, the people in the newsroom don't care about the money. They want the money to be there so they don't have more cutbacks. But I never cared about advertising. I don't know any reporter that does.
They lost their legitimate means of pursuing the prize and the story, so they turned to, via Scott, illegitimate means, and therefore
there was a fabricator, right? That was the big thing that everyone noticed. This guy's lying, right?
Yeah. The whole system became corrupt, just like the drug world and any other world. When the legitimate means of pursuing goals aren't available, you turn to illegitimate means.
Well, but that guy was operating on his own. He was a free agent. That wasn't an institutional prerogative. I admit that was the overt story. That was the overt story that we used to connect the newspaper to the police tale, to the narrative. But
they lost the pillars of the journalism group right within the newspaper.
Right. And what was the result of that? You're dead on it. You're dead on it. Keep going. And what happens when that happens?
Well, I mean, you lose the history that you're talking about of your city, the people who would cover
Absolutely.
the city, the people who understood journalism and what made great journalism and how to nail the story.
Right.
And
so what happens?
The newspaper begins to unravel.
What happens when a newspaper unravels? You're almost there. Oh. Take it home. Take it home. What happens when a newspaper, what's the difference between an unraveled newspaper and a raveled newspaper?
Democracy dies.
Well, I happen to agree with you, but it gets it wrong.
You can't find the story.
Bingo! Who said that? Yeah, that's it. The Wire, the whole season of The Wire was about what didn't happen. And this is why I am the king of meta. This is why I am. Now you've got me excited. This is the great joke that we played on the newspapers this year. And I said to myself when we worked on the story, I said, you know what? They're going to be angry at us. Not everybody. I mean, a lot of believe me, I got an inbox full of correspondence, emails from smart reporters who got it. But there were a lot of people who looked at the guy making the stories up, or the editors who were Pulitzer hungry, or the this or that, or the way this was portrayed, and they're arguing with what's happening. And people watch and read stories. People consume stories on one level for the most part. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. The guts of what happens in The Wire in Season 5 is what doesn't happen. In Season 5, a guy who wants to be governor cooks the stats. He ran as a reformer who was against the guy who he challenged, the incumbent he challenged, because the guy was cooking the stats and cheating and wasn't addressing the crime problem. Ends up going all the way around the bend until he's cooking the stats. And it never makes the newspaper. You never see them get a handle on it. We know that they hype the third grade test scores from Season 4, and that he's continuing to hype the third grade test scores to make No Child Left Behind look like it's working, when in fact they can't even sustain the third grade test scores into fifth grade, much less beyond that. It's never in the newspaper. Their attempt to write an education series falls by the wayside when they see more juice in writing about the homeless. We ultimately understand that there are political prosecutions, Clay Davis and stuff, that happen that are undercut because of the conflicting ambitions of the political players, be it the U.S. attorney or the state's attorney, and everybody's looking to the next chair. And so the ability to actually get Clay Davis falls apart in a series of backroom maneuvers. None of the backroom maneuvers are ever reported in the paper. We see the biggest drug dealer in town, Prop Joe, the guy who has the connection, the out of town, the good dope. He's killed. It's a brief on B3 that says, you know, that most likely when it was written says, secondhand store owner shot to death in house. Police have no suspects. Omar gets killed. Now, admittedly, you need a pretty good police reporter to know who Omar is. But that ain't going to happen because Twig took the buyout in episode 4. So he's gone. So it's, you know, Alma's a good reporter. Maybe one day she'll be, but right now she's in her 20s. She's been in town maybe a year or two. She ain't going to know who Omar is. All along, we put stuff in almost every episode that said, anything you know about the world of Baltimore that we've portrayed, and by the way, you knew a lot if you were viewers because you've been watching it for 50 some odd episodes, anything that you know to be nuanced and subtle and the real story will somehow not find a way to get into the newspaper. That was the story of The Wire. That was, yes, there was a guy making it up. That's an aberration. It's a fun aberration. By the way, it happens a lot. I mean, but the vast majority of reporters do not make stuff up, and they would be appalled. You know, they are like my friend Steve Gorman, who I went to college, my college roommate, he's sitting right there, who, when I remember the morning when he knew he screwed up the dorm fee hike. He had the percentages wrong, and there was a scream from the shower as he realized he did it was the funniest thing you'd ever heard. Do you remember? Am I lying? No. He came out, wrapped in a towel, saying, "I fucked up the dorm fee hike. I can't believe I did that. I have to call the president of the university and apologize." Or the chancellor. I remember that. It was that is the essence of most reporters. Poverty Reporter was great. I love that. They replaced the poverty beat with something they call the nonprofits beat. You know the difference between a poverty beat and a nonprofits beat? Poverty beat covers poor people of color. Nonprofit beat covers the rich white people you invite to your cocktail parties and tell you about the good works they're doing, and you cover their good works. And that's what happened at the ball. You know, in a city that was 47% of the African American males were without work, where neighborhoods were being decimated by drugs, where the unions had been busted in strike after strike. No labor reporter, no poverty reporter, no courthouse reporter. We had a nonprofit reporter. That was what happened to my newspaper. And the part that I loved, I just love the meta of it, which is, here's the critique, and there isn't anyone commenting on the critique. Because on some level, they just don't care. You know, whatever it was that newspapers once did is gone. At the best newspapers, there are shards of it that remain. But even then, you know, the Times is about to lose 100 jobs. The LA Times, this is a horror show. Jefferson said, it's a famous quote, you know, he'd rather have a country with newspapers and no government than a country with government and no newspapers. Well, the Jeffersonian nightmare is coming true in our lifetime. We're on the way to that. And that's what The Wire is about. And the funny part of this season is watching everybody debate whether or not Alma should have said this, or should have done that, or should have driven here, or whether or not Klebanow is based on Bill Marimo, who was this guy. Or it's so funny to watch because ultimately, they are heading down this path of extinction. I mean, I'm with Molly Ivins on this, the great Molly Ivins, when she says it seems that newspapers' only response to this technological tidal wave of the internet is to commit suicide. And they're doing it slowly, but they're complaining like a bunch of cats in the alley while they do, and not doing much to aggressively stop it. So that was the critique. And it's the last piece that we wanted to put into The Wire after 5 seasons because ultimately all those other attendant problems, unless they're recognized, unless they're talked about, unless they become the currency of debate, nothing's going to change in places like Baltimore or East St. Louis or East LA or South Chicago or North Philadelphia. The other America will keep being the other America. Except now they won't have a TV show. Wire's done. So that's my happy news. And now, I think I'll just throw it open, and anybody wants to talk about the show in general or about the law in the show.